Continuing with Episode 12, previously, Sunraku, Katsuo, and Arthur discussed defeating Weatherman. Arthur pointed out a couple of issues with the boss. Firstly, once the battle starts, the levels of all characters in the combat zone, except Weatherman himself, will be capped at level 50. Sunraku and Katsuo finally understood why Arthur mentioned that player levels wouldn't matter much against Weatherman. Moreover, Arthur shared that Weatherman is at level 200, creating a 150 level gap for the players to face. Hence, the individual skills of the players would be crucial for victory. Although Sunraku and Katsuo didn't need to reach the maximum level to face Weatherman, they still had to hit level 50 as the minimum requirement. Therefore, Arthur provided both of them with tools to level up in the Ruins of Glory. From the map Arthur provided, there appeared to be a hidden area perfect for leveling up their characters. Upon arriving at the Ruins of Glory, the view was unlike the typical SLF environment. The place was surrounded by iron walls with striking modern designs, and floating panels were scattered around. Observing this scenery, Katsuo felt familiar, commenting that it resembled the final boss arena in the game Brave Galaxy Fighter, one of the renowned top-tier games. Naturally, Sunraku was unfamiliar with the game. Setting that aside, Sunraku was curious about Katsuo's current level. When Katsuo mentioned he was at level 25, Sunraku teased him, revealing he was at level 31. Suddenly, a triangular-shaped object approached them. Unaware, the object was a pyramid-type suppression drone, an enemy in that area. Ready to face it, Katsuo declared he would handle it alone. Without hesitation, Sunraku agreed, especially curious about Katsuo's fighting style. Katsuo appeared to use only his bare hands. As the suppression drone lunged at him, Katsuo countered with a repel move and destroyed it with a crushing uppercut in one strike. Sunraku was impressed by Katsuo's gameplay, particularly the red aura surrounding his fists. This red aura was a buff from the Spirit Punch, red, enhancing physical strength and vitality. Soon after, similar enemies started appearing. Katsuo continued fighting while explaining some of his equipment and status to Sunraku. He had chosen the monk job, allowing him to strengthen himself and strike foes without weapons. His status leaned more towards agility and defense. As Sunraku prepared to share his status, Katsuo felt he could guess Sunraku's playstyle. He believed that Sunraku emphasized strength and agility with defenses as thin as tissue. Although not entirely accurate, Sunraku did prioritize agility and luck. However, Katsuo's guess about the thin defenses was spot on. Sunraku carefully examined the map again to navigate their journey to the hidden area. It seemed they could reach this area after reaching the next floor. The route they had to take was intricate. They needed to traverse the left side of the floor, which had a hole in the middle. Then, they had to jump over cracks and damaged panels to descend to the lower floor. After passing through this stage, they finally arrived between the second and third floors. Sunraku couldn't hide his admiration for this secret route's discovery due to its challenging nature. Their final step was to jump into a hole. However, the hole ahead appeared bottomless. Both began to suspect it might be a prank set up by Arthur. Nevertheless, they decided to give it a try. Katsuo volunteered to descend first, concerned about Sunraku's thin defenses. Amel was deeply impressed by Katsuo's kind, strong, and brave nature. He admired women like Katsuo. Sunraku, hearing this, was a bit confused. However, he soon realized why Amel thought so. Eventually, Sunraku explained that Katsuo was male. Yet, he struggled a bit to explain the concept of Hode to an NPC. From the hole's direction, Sunraku suddenly heard a faint voice. Although the voice was not very clear, Sunraku was certain it was Katsuo's voice. This indicated that the hole wasn't a trap. Meanwhile, Amel managed to catch what Katsuo said. Katsuo was teasing Sunraku for hesitating to descend. Upon hearing this, Sunraku quickly pulled Amel to jump into the hole. The hole led them into a cave surrounded by a lake. Based on the map's information, they could fish for a monster called the life-style lake serpent in that lake. Defeating this monster would grant significant experience points to players. Sunraku and Katsuo began fishing, and soon after, something tugged at Sunraku's line. However, what Sunraku caught was a life-size salmon. After Sunraku's catch, Katsuo's fishing rod was also pulled by something. Initially, Sunraku suspected Katsuo might have also caught a salmon like him. Katsuo had the same assumption since the shadow beneath the water indicated a small size. However, slowly, the shadow began to enlarge. Katsuo's catch finally emerged from the water, and it turned out Katsuo successfully caught a life-size lake serpent, the monster they were targeting. While it was time to fight, Sunraku intended to use his new weapon. Katsuo was a bit puzzled. According to Sunraku's story, his moon sword should only be usable once he reached level 50. However, Sunraku informed him that he had more than one new weapon, the Empire B Twin Blades. While in Rabbituza, Sunraku had asked for another weapon since he couldn't use the moon sword at the moment. Bilak crafted this new weapon for him. However, Sunraku ended up falling asleep during the weapon-making process by Bilak. After witnessing the incredible ascension process by Vicious, other weapon forgers seemed rather ordinary. Bilak was naturally upset seeing Sunraku asleep. He proudly mentioned that he was directly trained by Vicious. Sunraku started worrying if he needed to maintain good relations with others, apart from Emil and Vicious. He was reminded of his trauma from playing a mediocre dating game. In that game, Sunraku had to maintain good relationships with 12 girls. A slight misstep would instantly ruin his impression. For some reason, Sunraku received a bad ending where all the girls went to Italy just to learn how to make pizza. Putting that aside, Bilak's crafted weapon seemed quite impressive. Its right blade had a special attribute. Typically, every weapon, skill, magic, and monster attack had a destructive attribute that could harm an avatar's body. By inflicting sufficient damage to a desired area, this attribute could weaken or destroy that part. However, the Empire B Twin Blades had a more potent destructive attribute. The weapon possessed a corrupting and destructive attribute, the corrosive poison attribute. So even though the life-size lake serpent, which Sunraku and Katsuo were facing, seemed challenging for their current levels, Sunraku could outsmart it by leveraging this attribute. Over time, the effects of the destructive attribute would accumulate and corrode like poison. As Sunraku consistently attacked a particular spot, the monster's scales in that area became damaged. Katsuo immediately followed up with a powerful attack, the Spirit Punch, Black. With Emil's assistance, they managed to defeat the life-size lake serpent with minimal issues. After successfully defeating the opponent, Sunraku leveled up to level 32. Meanwhile, Katsuo managed to raise his level by 4, reaching level 29, and acquired a new skill. Katsuo was eager to integrate his new skill with the Skill Garden feature. Sunraku chuckled at Katsuo's enthusiasm for combining skills, a practice common in other games. Ironically, Katsuo then became confused. After all, SLF was a game heavily centered on skills. Thus, creating combo skills by merging them was quite common. Katsuo mentioned that this concept was taught in Firstia, the first city players visited. Since Sunraku had never been to Firstia, he was unaware of this. It was only now that Sunraku began to understand why some skills changed names and had different levels. All these were significant features within SLF. Katsuo began to doubt if Sunraku was even familiar with subjobs and guilds in the game. Sunraku was taken aback, realizing he had missed out on so much information just by overlooking one city. To divert his frustration, Sunraku decided it was best to focus on fishing and leveling up his character. Shortly after, Arthur arrived at the secret area as well. At that time, Sunraku was at level 42, and Katsuo was at level 40. Their progress was undeniably swift. Sunraku was still annoyed for missing the tutorial in Firstia. As Katsuo began to explain, Sunraku cut him off with a warning. By the way, during their recent battle, Katsuo was quite impressed by Emil's offensive capabilities. Understandably so, since Emil was at a higher level, specifically level 56. Neither Sunraku nor Katsuo had anticipated that Arthur would bring along such a useful item, the save tent. It was a simple tent but could serve as a data save point. With it, they wouldn't have to worry about losing progress after diligently leveling up there. If Arthur hadn't been in a hurry, she wouldn't have used this item. Arthur urged them to depart quickly. She informed them that players couldn't confront Weatherman, the Tomb Keeper, without speaking to an NPC first. This NPC was only available during a full moon and was named Setsuna from the bygone days.